your body, his temple, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Amen. We're created in God for the purpose of doing good works. If there's anything that is good that's going to happen in the world, it's because we are answering and surrendering to what God wants us to do. The good comes from the good in you. So if there's anything that's good that's going to happen, it's because it touches the good in you. And what's in you, God allows to come out of you. When the good in you is seen to the world, that's God. The good that's in you, when the world begins to see the good, they're seeing God at work. It's what we do. The world is changed by doers, people that are willing to see the difference and then make the difference. I have a graphic I want to show you, and I'll set it up this way. Featuring the full gold nocturnus pin by Tapaldi, hand-set black diamonds made of 345 set with 123 rubies. The price at, now what did you bid for this pen? Can you believe it? $8 million for this pen? Yeah, $8 million. I go back to the fact that there's 945 hand-set black diamonds and with a set of 123 rubies. And that make this pen, when it was auctioned off, $8 million for this pen. What do you think the owner of this pen, you think he uses it every day? He goes around and... You're out there and somebody says, hey, can I borrow your pen? What would you say? What would you say? It's probably a pen that's in a glass case, its own special case, and labeled and in a collection somewhere, and it's the design is original. We don't use these pens, they're meant to be looked at. Now, according to what this pen's purpose is, it's a writing instrument. So with the purpose of it not being fulfilled, what is this pen really worth? The value of something is the use of it. Your value is not determined by how good you look, how much possessions you have, or where you come from, or your status in life. Your possession is on what you're allowing yourself to be used and for whose purpose. We can use and do what we want to do and fulfill our purpose, but we miss the mark because we're not doing what God designed us to do. Ultimately, we were designed with a specific work in mind, a specific purpose. There's something that I can do that no one else in the world can do. That's why God created me, for the difference that I'm meant to make. He created you with that same intent. And when we use what God gave us, the whole world is better as a result. Matthew chapter 5. Let's go to Matthew chapter 5, verse number 15. It says, Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to who? All who are in the house. It gives light to everybody in the house. That's the purpose of this lamp. In the Message Bible, I like this translation. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be the light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. You're the instrument. And as instruments of God, we can feed the hungry. We can clothe the naked. We can love the unlovable, touch the untouchable, make the difference that no one else can make under the hand of God. With us, we can't do it, but with God, how many things are possible with God? All things are possible with God. It may be difficult, and sometimes we look at the difficulty, and when something looks impossible to us, say to yourself, this has got to be a God thing. You've got to, in your mind, say, this has got to be a God thing. When it seems to be bigger than you, and you seem to be intimidated by it, or you seem discouraged by it, step back for a moment and say, this has got to be God. Because God doesn't allow you to see something without something in it that you're meant to feel and experience through faith. As you know, as Christians, we don't walk by sight. We go by faith. That means what you see is deceiving to your faith. What you see, it seems to be overwhelming, but in faith, you know that this is only a step with God. Your faith proves God. You want to know who God is? As you walk in faith, you're proving God as you walk in faith. Doing the impossible allows you to see what you cannot do without God. When you're able to accomplish that, you'll look back and you say it wasn't because there was nothing that you could take credit for. It could only have been God working in you that allowed you to accomplish where you've been right now. Look back at your own lives. You probably remember there was a time when you thought you'd never make the amount of money that you're making at this point. You remember that way back when you were at the beginning? The minimum wage? When you just barely scraping the bucket? Now God has blessed you. Now how do we show favor to God? Because God didn't stop here. Did you know He didn't stop here? He has how much more? Exceedingly, abundantly more than you could ever imagine. That means that God says, you're so far away from where I really see in you. But we don't ever want to settle for where we are and think that this is the limits. When we start depending on ourselves, we start trusting in what we can do and what we can have, we now limit God. We got this far by faith. We believe God. Against everything, we believed Him. Then when we get a few things, we tend to start forgetting about God. Or we can. I know out there, not in here. Out there, people do that. They forget about God. First note, sometime life chooses you. Make a note of that. Sometimes life chooses you. Why is this happening? Sometimes it's just your turn. I see it that way. We would love to be able to go through life just unscathed with no issues. Keep the temperature at 74, God, if you can keep it right there for me. And no rain this week. Rain. No, let's not have rain this week. This is not a good week to have rain. And we don't want the storms in life, but it's those times, it's those things that allows us to appreciate how good life can be. Have you ever been sick and you recovered your health? You appreciate your health more. Why? Because you've seen what it's like to go through an illness. But if we never go through the storm, we never go through the trials, we won't know what it's like to really appreciate what God gives us. We can take for granted how easy it is until we go somewhere and realize how difficult life can truly be. One person complains about having no shoes, and then they see someone with no feet. And then you go back into your perspective. Having no shoes is not bad. You can deal with life the way God gives it to us. I grew up in a time when when teachers used to paddle you, used to whip you or whatever. In fact, I grew up in a time when everybody could whip you. Yeah. Everybody had a right to whip you. Some of you laugh because you know it's like to have that, right? You out there, you playing basketball, and you're supposed to be home at a certain time, and then somebody's mama is coming down the street, and you just hope it's not your mama, because she's not coming to play basketball. No. And you don't want daddy to come. When you could argue with your mama, and your dad comes in mid-shot, you just drop everything. You done. Because I grew up in this household where mama didn't work and daddy didn't play. I don't know if you had one of those. 2-story house. Mama had her story. Dad had his story. That was our family when we grew up. But that discipline, what we had to go through, helped us. If you don't understand it, it helped you. Because I had friends that I grew up with that didn't have the discipline in their homes. They didn't have it. They could do whatever. My friend Jimmy, he could stay out all night. He could curse in front of his parents. He could eat whatever he wanted to. I thought, man, that's the life to have. Because I'm in prison over here. I'm incarcerated at my house. I have curfew. Well, years later, as you go into years later, the things that he did not learn at home, the discipline that he did not learn, now that life is going to challenge you, and life is also going to change you. The same thing is going to happen in life that didn't happen when you were home. What you are spared from at home, no one can spare you in life. Life is fair, and the challenges in life are going to be harder than the ones you had at home. But if you're conditioned to understand that some things were necessary, it's your turn to get the whipping. It's your turn to go through the pain. It's your turn to go through the grief. We all have our time. It's not always going to be bad days, but you're going to have some good days. You're going to have some bad days. But don't jump too high when you win, and don't sink too low when you lose. Your bad days take you into your good days. And your good days, if you're not careful, are going to take you eventually into some bad days. Those in business know, don't jump too high because you have a good month. Is that right? Business people know, don't jump up, don't celebrate too much when you have a good month, because why? The next month is coming. And you got to do it again. So you learn how to be at peace and content with whatever God brings you. That's serenity. Knowing that in all things God is still in control. That we're never too big, we're never too haughty, we're never at the point where we don't need God anymore. When you get away from your parents' house, you couldn't wait to get away so that you could be independent. I'm independent now. And I found out what independence really meant. That means you're now independent to pay your own bills. You're independent to buy your own food. You're independent to clean your own, you do your own laundry. You're independent for all of the responsibilities that you didn't know someone was covering for you. So we don't want to be independent from God, because there's so many things that God covers for us that we don't understand. His mercy every day is renewed for all of us. There are blessings seen and unseen. And the ones that you don't see are the ones that you're not aware of how God blesses you every day. Just with life itself is one of the biggest blessings. With health, every day someone else is getting diagnosed with some incurable condition. Emergency room visits, deaths of family members, disasters of all kinds. So when you're able to go through a day or a week without some of those things, it's time for you to just really know that it's God's grace and His mercy. It's not because you're so good that you deserve everything going well right now. When things are going well, that should be your time to really give God the highest praise. To give Him the glory, even in low times, but especially when God starts blessing you, it's time to really just shout and give God praise. Let's give God a round of praise right now for what He's doing, for who He is. If you really understand Him, He is worthy of your praise. You can jump up and down when your favorite team, but your favorite team is not worthy of your praise. You know, you have allegiance to certain things, but the one that you should have the most honor for is for God. It's for God. Because sometimes we can believe that we're tested unfairly. We believe that we're the only one that's going through this. Why is this happening to me? Oh mercy, oh pity me. So 1 Corinthians 10:13 says that no temptation or no trial has overtaken you except such as common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will also make the way of escape that you may be able to bear it. Let's hold for a moment there before we go into the Message version of that. So it's saying that no matter what you're going through, you're not the only one who's going through it. You're not the only one who has gone through it before you. Everybody goes through the same trials. It's like when your teacher passes out the tests. Everybody takes the same test, but there's a different score. One person excels and sets the curve or whatever. Another one fails the same test. It's not that they're a bad person or good or bad or that person's better than you. It's just they were better prepared for the test. The more prepared you are for the tests and challenges in life, the better you're going to do. Now, you can get a bad score, then you get angry at the one who's scoring better. Or you get angry at the teacher for giving you a test, say this was unfair. You can just become bitter and resentful and say, I'll never take another test as long as I live. And that's deceiving yourself, because life is full of challenges and tests. And the way you approach those are the same way you approach life's tests. We'll always feel sometimes that it's unfair. Everyone's gone through, I would say, the same test. Different situations, but the same tests. And we can move from here and say, I'm going to go over to another place. You're going to take your challenges with you somewhere else. This job is the worst job I'm going to go to, give me another job. And you'll find the same challenges at another job. You almost take the same people with you. You can almost say this is just like the person at the last job, and you almost identify the same thing that you left because you didn't pass the test. See, once you pass the test, you know what you meant to know and you understand what you meant to understand. And now you're better as a result. One friend quit his job and tried to find another job and went through job after job after job and found nothing better. And he found out that different doesn't mean better, it just means different. You can get something different, it doesn't guarantee that it's going to be better. Because better is what you left. You have to find better in where you are. If you wanted to get better, make it better. That's what the challenge is. You want better to come to you, but you don't want to have the responsibility of making where you are better. So after going through all these jobs, he found the common denominator within him hating all of these jobs was himself. So he called back to his first job, and they said, guess what? The person that had he's just quit. So his job was open again. And he went back, and guess what he found? A better job. It was not the same as it used to be. All the people were different. Everything was changed. Same people. So he didn't need a better job. He needed a better attitude about the job that he had. Sometimes we got to change our disposition about where we are and watch better change as you change. We can pray for God to God make it better. God make it better. And God says, okay, let's start with you. We want God to work on a couple more people. God says, let's start with you first. And then once we start making you better, let's just go. But then I start working on. And you know, as God starts working on you, what happens? They're doing better already. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. I don't know how you're doing it, but that's really wonderful. I can tolerate them now. Because better doesn't come from without. Better comes from within. It's not out there that gets better. It's in here that gets better. As I get better, the whole world becomes a better place. Because we're allowing God to come in and create the change that we need. Are you getting it? Yes. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, the Message portion. No test or temptation that comes your way is beyond the course of what others have had to face. All you need to remember is that God will never let you down. He'll never let you be pushed past your limit. He always will be there to help you come through it. Give God a round of praise. Isn't that great news? You know, I never got much sympathy and pity when I was growing up. No, I used to say, man, he had a rough childhood. It wasn't that bad. But I never got the pity. You know, you ever had ones where you wanted to cry, they wouldn't let you cry? My mother used to whip me and tell me, don't cry. While she's whipping you, she said, you better not cry. You ever get a whipping and try not to cry? That's what you do. That just comes with the whipping. She whip you and you better not cry. But I found in life, I don't whine when things are not happening. Why don't I whine? Like everybody else is whining when something is not going well. Sometimes when people are going through a situation, it always comes out of their mouth. They whine about it to everybody who will listen to them. They're just crying and crying and crying and, why don't you cry? Maybe Mama was right. And she would say, I'll give you something to cry about. Like, what is this? What is this you're giving me? Isn't this supposed to be? Hebrews chapter 12 and verse number 1. Hebrews 12 and 1. This is our cloud of witnesses. Do you see what this means? All these pioneers who blazed the way, all these veterans cheering us on, it means we'd better get on with it. Strip down, start running, and what? Never quit. So as you're doing what you're doing, you can hear those that gone before you cheering you on, say, come on, you can do this. Get up, let's go, let's do this. And you can feel the strength that comes from those who've gone before you. Because they've had to endure a lot harder than you have, and I have. I remember my dad used to tell me about how hard they had it. You know, remember that? Your dad would tell you that? Your parents would tell you how hard it was? Y'all don't know. You don't know what's going on. I said, what's your dad? We had to walk 5 miles to school in the snow, uphill, both ways. We had one pair of shoes. I won the first mile. I gave my brother, he won the second mile. And he would tell me how difficult it was, because we need a perspective sometime. We could tell our children the same thing. You know something? I once had dial-up. Yeah. You think you got it bad? Try that for a while. We can talk about what we had. We had it tough. But then we don't remember how difficult the trail was for those that have gone before us. Our ancestors were stronger than we are right now. They were more faithful, more enduring. They withstood the challenges greater than we do right now. And they persevered, and we're now following on their footsteps. And we have the responsibility of setting this trail for the next generation. Sometimes we have a generation that's struggling because we never grasped where we should be. We never took the mantle. We never took the place where we need to be. We felt entitled to everything. And everyone looking at our children says, why do you feel entitled to everything? Because they're learning it from us. We don't want to struggle anymore. We don't want to go out of our way. That's too far, too difficult, too hot, too cold. We have options now. There used to be an option when you didn't have an option to go to church. Everybody went to church in the house. Everybody. You just got up and you just knew you're going to church. Now we could go to church unless Jimmy has a game, or unless we have company in town, or if I just don't feel like it, or it looks like it's going to rain. You could be sick and you still have to go to church. Daddy, I don't feel well. That's all right. You'll feel better at church. I feel like I'm going to throw up. Well, you can throw up at church. Come on, get in the car. No excuses. You went. And you're better for it. You're better. So we deny sometimes ourselves and our children, the next generation, the rights to what we have received. You have a right to have courage. You have a right to have freedom. You have a right to be inspired. You have a right to endure. That's a right. That's what makes you strong. Not the things you backed away from, not the things that were easy for you. It's the challenges that have come that have made you strongest. You are who you are because someone else has struggled and fought to get you where you are now. Now, where's your trial? Where's your fight for the next generation after you? Someone's got to take up the mantle. Someone's got to be the ones that those behind us are learning and watching us. Watching us. Sometimes life chooses you. Next, something is missing. I don't know if you ever got to the point where something is missing. I don't know if you ever felt that way. Everything's good, but something seems to be missing. You know? It could be something paternal, could be something, everything's good, but you feel like there's a link, there's a missing link somewhere. You ever done jigsaw puzzles? You ever done jigsaws? See, way back in the day when you used to have all these pieces, 500-piece jigsaw puzzle, whatever, and sometimes you didn't know what was missing until what? The last piece. You're looking around for the last piece. It was missing all the time, but you didn't know it until you got to the point. See, we can build our lives and be so busy building our lives and doing what we do, they won't realize that all along that something was missing. And once we achieve a certain level of success and we start to get to where we want, we can look around and say, something is missing. I know we got money, I'm healthy, everything is going well, but something is missing. I don't know if you've ever been there. Something is missing. And you don't know what it is. That's called a craving. And sometimes a person has a craving, they try to fill it with what they want. They go and buy new things. They go and spend money. They go and do crazy stuff to try and fulfill the craving. But if the craving is for a certain thing, you just can't fill it with anything. It's like a nutritional deficiency. If you're deficient in a certain nutrient, you're going to have certain symptoms. Like, for instance, protein deficiency causes you to have cravings for sweets. You may not have known that. If you're deficient in protein, you have a craving for sweets. Now your body is trying to cry out for protein, but all you're doing, you're filling yourself with more sweets. You just got this sweet tooth. You eat a whole cake, you say, well, there's something is still missing. You eat a whole thing of ice cream and something is still missing. You go out and indulge in whatever you indulge in, but something is still missing because that thing you're trying to fill it with does not satisfy the craving. A lot of the people in the world don't realize what's missing is Jesus. That's what's missing, but they don't want him. If you offer a person who had this craving say, I think you need more protein. Nah, I don't need it. I need to go get me another pie. That's what I need. I'm going to drop by. Marie Cal? I don't think I have Marie Cal's anymore. Whatever. I need another piece of cake. Yeah. But what's missing will never be fulfilled by whatever it is that you're trying to replace it with. You've got to find the source. Find what is missing. Luke chapter 13, verse number 6. This is a parable. He also spoke this parable. A certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard. He came seeking fruit on it and found what? None. He came seeking fruit and found none. Then he said to the keeper of the vineyard, for 3 years I've come seeking fruit on this fig tree and found none. Cut it down. Why does it use up the ground? But he, which means the keeper of the garden, answered and said to him, Sir, let it alone this year also, until I dig around it and fertilize it. If it bears fruit, well, but if not, after that, you can cut it down. Now look at where we are. The garden is our place in the world. We're that tree. And God's looking for us to bear fruit in his garden. Year after year, he comes looking for you and I to be the fruit bearers. He looks to be a fruit. And if you're not bearing fruit, he says, okay, done with you. Enough with you. But then the keeper, which is Jesus, on our behalf petitions God and says, well, hold on, let's get some people around them. Let's get some more word into them. Let's bring them back home. Let's get around. Let's fertilize them. Let's get them more into what we know they should be. And if they bear fruit, then good. The Bible does not give us the outcome of the parable. It doesn't say whether they cut it down or what happened afterwards, because we're meant to finish that. We're meant to live out. We're the one. We write the end of this story. Are we allowing ourselves to receive what God's giving to us and become fruitful? Or are we just going to keep doing what we've always done and not bearing what God intends for us to bear? To not do that. Number 3, strength is determined by use. Strength is determined by use. A person who does not use an area, what happens if you don't use it? You tend to lose it. If you don't use your strength, you lose that strength. Whatever that strength may be. I have a relative who was in high school. He wanted to be an architect. And he used to do beautiful designs and beautiful work. And he showed me this one rendering where he had to kind of put together a scale of a building, of a modern building. And it was brilliant. It was like a very modern building with all the rooms. He was showing the rooms and how he did it. And as he was explaining it, I could see his passion for it. I said, man, this is amazing. I say, are you going to do this? You're going to be an architect? He said, no, man, that's too much work. He said, all those classes, man, no, I don't think so. I said, but this is something that's your dream. You're good at this. I tell you would be awesome at this. In fact, he had an uncle that was a very noted architect in Chicago. Had done a lot of the stuff for the airports and other stuff. So he already had a connection. Yeah, you probably know him. Well, the architect, Braisley, Bill, yeah. He was the architect, and his nephew was the one we were talking to. And he had done a lot of wonderful work in Chicago. But his nephew just didn't want to go through the struggle of becoming what he needed to be. And over time, what happened to his dream? You don't use it, you lose it. One of the best minds, who knows what God would not have done with this young man. I encouraged him as much as I could. But at some point, you got to believe in yourself. Believe that God's given you this gift. Something that only you're meant to do. Something that's going to make the world a better place. Frank Lloyd Wright died some years back. And he did amazing works. From many years ago, stuff he did in the 1920s and 30s, people are still looking at it and marveling at what he did. But guess what? He didn't have the education. He didn't go through architectural training. It was gifted. It was what God gave you. When you start using what God gave you, you will change the world. It's not your ability. It's not your strength. It's not your intellect. It's not your intelligence. God does not need you. But if we will put our hand in God's hand and trust him, God will bring out things in you that you never thought were possible. That's what God loves to do. But we have to deny ourselves and surrender completely to him. As a result of a person not wanting to use the strength that they have, the bones that attach to those muscles start to become weaker. Because if there's no demand placed on that, the bones not need to have as much minerals. So you have less calcium, less strength to the bones. And now when they examine you, you're osteoporotic. You have weakening, you have these conditions. Now you want them to treat your conditions. You know, if you just start using what you've got. Sometimes we don't need to add more to it. We just got to start using what God gave us. Your way out of what situation you are is to allow God to bring you through it. We try to get through it every way except going to God sometimes. You hear people say this at the end, now it's in God's hands. That means they've tried everything else and then they say, now it's in God. They give God the last days, the broken pieces, the leftovers. But God said, if you seek first the kingdom. He said, just put me first. He says, in all of these things, all of this stuff will be added to you. But you can have all that stuff without God, and you'll find out that something is still missing. I don't know what it is, but I feel like something is missing. We've got everything. You go and you talk to people that's wealthy and don't have God, you'll look at them and you can tell there's a void, there's something that's missing, and they don't know what it is, and they're taking Prozac and they're going through therapy and they're going through all kind of stuff, and they find that they don't know that what's missing is something that so simple, putting God first. He promises that your latter days will be your best days. I love that promise. See, I'm getting into my latter days now. Yeah. And they are my best days. I have to say, and this is not bragging, I'm in the best shape I've ever been in my whole life. Better than my 30s, my 40s, my 50s. And God, wait till 60. I mean, may not be as strong, can't do some of the big feats of strength, but just to my conditioning, it's just God's giving me something now that I never got because I was always chasing something back then. And now when you start slowing down, you realize God can find you here. I was running away from everything else, trying to get things done. Sometimes we can run away from God, chasing the dream, chasing the rainbow, chasing the money, chasing the women, chasing whatever it is that you chase. And we're running away from God. But when we know, we become a God chaser. Amen. You begin to chase after God. And everything you do, God, I'm going after you. Today you're going to wake up, God, this is the day I'm going after God today. And when you know that, when you know your mind and your heart is set on God, nothing else really matters anymore. A lot of stuff that you were going after before, you're thinking, why did I waste my time going after such things that didn't pay? Well, now God, it's Him that you need. He is that one that we need.